What's going on, people? Welcome to United View and welcome to another episode of the Tactical View, the final Tactical View forever, because it's over. We've done a trial, we didn't win the trophies, the Tactical View weren't really tactical in, and it's done. Cam's gone, he's off, he's packing his bags and he's gone. Obviously that isn't the case, but
he's giving me the De Gea treatment. Kept my contract going till the end of the season. But he's not signed it off. Yeah, I've signed it, but he wants it gone, so it's thrown up, tear it up.
I'm still thinking about it, yeah. Cam wants an extension. I'm like, shall I sign it off or not? No, but obviously we are going to get into the tactical view off of the last game of the season, which was the FA Cup final. It'll be interesting to see your thoughts on that. And just going forward, before we carry on, we've got a lot planned over the summer as well, some different types of content. Just because there is no games for a little bit, okay, we're still going to do lots of different things as well. So yes, let's get into it, man. Come on, the last one of the season. Yeah. Why were we so rubbish? Just bring up De Gea and say, we're terrible.
We're not doing that. Sometimes with tactics and that sort of thing, you can have a great tactical plan and lose a game. You can have a terrible tactical plan and win a game. You can get everything wrong tactically, but the moments in the game can go your way and you can end up winning. This game against City, honestly, in the player ratings after the game, I gave Erik ten Hag a 9 out of 10. I thought he couldn't have done any more possibly with what he had at his disposal to try and win that game. I think he did an absolutely fantastic job of trying to stop City play the way they play. The John Stones role in particular, pushing up into midfield, has caused so many teams huge problems. City smashed Madrid. They did a really good job against Arsenal and nearest rivals in the Premier League, but we limited them to not that many clear-cut chances. Now, obviously, it's a final, so I think Pep didn't want to push every player in the box to the extent that he did in the second leg against Madrid, for example. But I thought Ten Hag did a fantastic job. So this show is not going to be all negative that, we lost the game. This show is going to be reflecting on what went well, what Erik ten Hag did properly, a few tweaks that Guardiola made to change things in the second half. But I think overall it should be a positive show because generally we've done quite well. To start with, though, quick look at the City team, pretty much what I expected. What you expected as well?
Yeah, I mean, we knew that he was going to start a couple of days before, so that's fine. And then other than that, that's the starting team, isn't it?
I think, Akanji was the only one that was slightly different.
Maybe for
Ake, but
he can slot in there. It doesn't matter who plays there. They're both not out and out left backs, are they? So
exactly, they've got their role, got their function, and they're the right profile for the job that they're doing.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's what that sort of starts and looks like. Now, obviously, we said in the preview show in terms of how City set up, there were some things that we looked out for. So number one, obviously, is when they're often when the ball's at the City end and they're sort of playing out from the back, what you typically see is they start actually out in a back four with the fullbacks a little bit higher and wider. But in this game, what was a little bit different that they did was rather than starting out in that back four, they actually pushed Stones quite a lot of the time, even when the ball was right in their own third, a little bit higher into midfield. And Ortega actually stepped into that back four and became one of the centre backs. So that back four in build-up was Walker, Ortega, Diaz and Akanji.
Mad, isn't it?
So it's like you've got the benefits of pushing Stones up, so you've got the extra man in midfield, you've still got the double pivot, but then you've also got Gundogan and De Bruyne higher up the pitch. So if you get your head up and you're one of these centre-backs, or even Walker or Akanji, you've got the winger wide, you've got the advanced midfielder just inside, you've got Rodri and you've got Stones in the centre, and you've got obviously the option to the back four as well. It's fantastic. Look, I think Erik ten Hag would dream of being able to do something like that, but for obvious reasons we can't do that at the moment. But it was interesting to see that rather than the typical role of Stones starting here, he was fully just starting in midfield. He wasn't even starting as a centre-back.
Maybe like if we had a goal kick or something, he'd drop back into there, etc. when we had it. But when they had it, he's off, he's gone. Yeah,
I mean, Pep said something in an interview a while back in terms of, this was when he was doing inverted fullbacks, and it was whether I think the question was about whether he plays the extra player in the back line to make a 3, to sort of like a 3-2-5 or a 2-3-5, and puts that inverted fullback into midfield. And the answer he gave was the positioning depends on the nature of the counter-attacking threat from the opposition. So if the opposition win the ball back deep and they try and play lots of passes through midfield before getting the ball forward, then they'll have an extra player in midfield, which is where Stones will be a bit higher. If the opposition play a lot of long balls straight away direct, then he'll have that player in the back line instead. So
extra cover,
Yeah, it depends on the situation. But in terms of the way United tried to nullify this build-up from City, you could see right from the start of the game that as soon as the ball went out one side, so let's say Ruben Diaz has got on the ball there, what we'd see is you'd have this front four of United being really, really narrow. So you'd have Bruno in this sort of area ready to go and press Akanji if he needs to. You'd have Eriksen on top of Rodri. You've got Jadon Sancho on John Stones. So the idea was to make sure that City cannot play down that side. And
they have to switch.
Have to switch the play, have to go out the other side, and then they'll shuffle across. And I think that front four worked really, really well in terms of the way that they were really on top of things. They were disciplined in their jobs, but also quite a lot of the time, because there's a lot of rotation with City, a lot of movement, and obviously sometimes United had the ball on the odd occasion that we did, and You get a bit of rotation, so Rashford might be in here, Eriksen was in there. And it was really nice to see that they've obviously worked hard on it in training, because no matter who was where within that front four, they all knew each other's jobs and their own jobs. They were able to switch and rotate freely, which was, I thought, a really successful plan in terms of limiting City from playing out down that sort of down the side that they're on or through the middle of the pitch. So he sort of forced them around the outside where they're a little bit weaker, and obviously with Grealish and Bernardo Silva, they're not going to hurt you with the same directness and pace that perhaps Leroy Sané and Raheem Sterling had in previous years. Yeah,
no, I agree with that. I think also with Fred, when he was trying to obviously sit on De Bruyne, when you look at how impactful De Bruyne was, you could say De Bruyne didn't have his most glamorous game. City didn't have to be that good to beat Man United on Sunday. City are good enough to beat a lot of teams in second gear. Yeah. Especially if the other team, the punches they're getting back aren't that hard, basically. Yeah. And I felt like that was the moral of the story against City. Quality cost us, and mistakes cost us, or lack of quality.
I'd say so, but I mean, so what we've talked about so far is very much the front four of the team structure. You mentioned Fred doing his job there on De Bruyne with the back six. We'll talk about that in a second, but in terms of the overall game plan, limiting City to 1.22 XG is a really impressive achievement from Ten Hag's side, and actually on XG, we outscored them. That is the penalty, and also it's the goalmouth scramble that possibly.
This is why XG is mad, though.
But it's a measure of the quality of chances created, and I think if you can reduce this,
there wasn't much in it.
Yeah,
because City, like you said, did David De Gea have to make any big boy saves? He made one from Haaland, and then they scored, and it was offside.
Yeah,
as the game kind of went on. Other than that, I don't think he made a save.
There weren't any
obviously
big saves. Should have made saves.
Should have saved the good one.
Made saves, yeah.
But to say looking at this XG thing, I'm going to show you something that Man United look more likely to score.
No, I wouldn't take too much from this, because I think obviously the penalty accounts for a lot of it, and also the goalmouth scramble towards the end, which was just desperation, really. Yeah. But I would say
the penalty comes from a fortunate, it is a pen, but Wan-Bissaka's tried to head it in and it just hits his hand.
Of course it's fortunate.
They haven't created a chance.
It's not like we created that much, but in terms of limiting them, which was, given how good they are, that's something that I was really impressed by. Now, looking at the picture we've got up here, this I think shows you the structure that United were going for in terms of being narrow, being compact, don't let them play. So you can see it in this moment here, they've got that back four, you've got Walker, you've got Diaz, you've got Ortega there as the other centre-back on the other side, which is a nice thing to have, and you've got Akanji out on the opposite side. But what you can see is, look, Rashford, in this particular moment, it's Eriksen that's gone out to press Ruben Diaz on the ball. You see Rashford's dropped into his job on Rodri. You've got Bruno there on John Stones.
Kind of doing both,
but you can see Bruno's telling them, because you can see from the body shape of Walker at this moment, they're going to go out and they're going to go back and out the other side. Yeah. You can see Bruno's pointing at John Stones, telling Rashford, right, that's your job now. Sancho, you then go across to Rodri, go in there.
And he's half on his way to turn there.
Exactly.
And Fred's also half and half in case it gets in.
So that was
good positioning.
So
good positioning.
So it was a bit strange defensively in the sense that very much it was a front four and a back six, and the jobs of the different players in that unit were very different. So the front four, as we've said, their job was to try and they're playing against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 City players. So you're going to have that. If you want a spare man at the back, you're going to have to deal with an underload somewhere else. So that's what their job was. So their job wasn't to mark every player all the time. Their job was stop these two getting on the ball and stop them playing through in that area, force them round the side, and it worked really well. So I think what we should do now, have a look at the back six and the job that they did.
Yeah.
So obviously, with someone as big and as strong and powerful as Haaland, you're going to have an extra man there. So that was Varane and Lindelof. They sort of dealt with Haaland. That was sort of locked in there. And typically, as we've seen from United all season long, man-to-man in as many areas of the pitch as possible. That's a really key principle for Erik Ten Hag. Something that he loves to do is create those 1v1 battles. So we had Shaw on Bernardo Silva, Wan-Bissaka dealing with Grealish, and then what that left was De Bruyne and Gundogan able to be dealt with by Fred and Casemiro. And to be honest, for the most part, I think Fred and Casemiro did do a good job.
Yeah.
But where I think this is an interesting contrast between the styles of lots of different teams is that, as we said, it was very much a front four doing their job and a back six doing their job. And when you are so reliant on man marking and being really man orientated, so Fred on De Bruyne, Gundogan on Casemiro on Gundogan, likewise in the wide areas and with the centre backs dealing with Haaland, there's differences in approach. So obviously you can be man-oriented or you can be zonal-oriented and cover space. If you're man-oriented, typically that can sometimes leave larger spaces on the pitch because you're focused on not covering the space as well as you can, but covering the particular player.
And if someone gets beat,
yeah,
then you've got trouble.
Exactly. So I think in the first half, it worked very, very well because City had a game plan, they played the way they often do. Ten Hag had a way to sort of deal with that. And then in the second half, Guardiola made some tactical tweaks there with the way that he set the team up. So what we saw was, in the first half it was very much like this, but in the second half he decided that instead he'd drop Bernardo Silva a little bit deeper, drop Jack Grealish a bit deeper, and he did that because United are very much setting up those 1v1 battles. And the idea was that by doing that, because we've got those 1v1 assignments, you'll draw Luke Shaw higher, you'll draw Wan-Bissaka higher, and then you'll create that space in the sort of wide areas either side. And sometimes it wasn't even a case of just using those spaces. So sometimes, as we'll see with the pictures, that would mean, yeah, great, De Bruyne goes out there, Fred follows him, Gundogan goes out there, Casemiro goes out there.
Which happened for the free kick.
Yes, it did. And then, obviously, if you do that, then there's a massive space in the middle of the pitch here. And that's where the advantage of Guardiola having not just those two midfielders, but also Stones and Rodri, gives you the extra man to then ghost in here and ghost in here.
There was a period of play where it got quite messy, and I think both teams kept giving it away. But then John Stones, particularly, he had this little period where he just calmed everything down. He was nice little touches. The ball was up in the air, and it looked like we could maybe nick it. And he just came out with his, and just went, "I have that." Yeah. And they just played out. It just played out.
Was it that one where he sort of dropped back into his own box? Did that sort of? He just waited for Rashford to run past him, and then.
Did you see it? He just dropped the shoulder, and then they were gone.
That is insane.
In that one, in that particular moment, I literally said to Josh was eating garlic bread at the time. He wasn't watching. So he had to wait for the replay. I said, Josh, watch this. Watch what he's just done. He's just taken everyone out of the game. And it was literally that. It was John Stones literally here, innit? And he just waited for, I don't know who it was. No, I wouldn't have been sure. I don't know if it was whoever it was.
Rashford, I think, that ran past
him. And he just went, I'm going this way.
Yeah.
And we was all out of the game. And he just travelled all out there. It was ridiculous.
It was crazy.
It was ridiculous.
That's how good these guys are at an individual level. But also, I think in that moment, I mean, obviously you can't see everything from the TV pictures and from at the stadium because I was quite far away. But it might well have been that Ortega gave them some communication saying Rashford's going to run straight past you. It could easily be that's something they've picked up on pre-game, they've watched in the way that we press.
But the awareness of them, either way with communication or the intuition from Stones to just know, I'm cool that side. That's the level. That's why you want technical players.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, as we were saying there, in the so the way that Guardiola disrupted United's man marking in the second half was really impressive, and it sort of shows the positives and the downsides of the way the game's gone a bit at the moment, where there's less emphasis on players to change things on the pitch. You wait for half time really for the coach to then change things. So in the first half, United's approach worked really well in terms of stopping City, and then Guardiola made those tweaks, and obviously after half time there's no chance for Ten Hag to then respond. So and
we're not that team that's like proactive that can maybe work that out on our feet.
No, not really. But I think there's less of that in modern football now anyway. You wait for the coach to give their solution to the problem. But yeah, it was really interesting to see how, obviously, once that first step had happened of getting Silva and Grealish a bit deeper, get them on the ball a bit more, let them control the tempo. But then the way that City then used that to then exploit spaces elsewhere was really impressive. So you've got obviously Haaland pinning Lindelof and Varane, and then as we said, Gundogan goes wide, Casemiro follows, De Bruyne might go wide, and Fred will follow, and then all that will happen is one of these guys, if the ball was on this side, for example, Rashford or let's say Eriksen's in that 10 role at the moment dealing with Rodri, his attention, and this is where you sort of add the technical level on top of the tactical level, because the ball's on that side, Eriksen's attention is going to be focused that way. So whichever man he's supposed to be marking, if it's Rodri, all Rodri had to do was a slight subtle movement behind Eriksen so Eriksen can't see him. And then as soon as this sort of shape's happened, Grealish has come a bit deeper, create that space, Gundogan's gone out there, all that Rodri would do, blindside run behind Eriksen and into that space. And because obviously all of these guys are marking a particular man, Eriksen switched off for a very brief second, or someone else has switched off, he's in so much space. So that's where, because we're man marking, we're worried about the players in particular rather than being worried about the space, which is what you're worried about when you're covering zones. And that means there's bigger spaces that if someone does manage to get away from their man, they can ghost into and they're in a lot of space. So we'll show that now with a couple of pictures. So the first one we've got, if it will, there we go. Yeah. So in this particular situation at the moment, we have got Ruben Diaz on the ball there, just in front of Erik Ten Hag. You've got the front four structure of United again. So you've got Bruno, Eriksen, Sancho, then you've got Rashford in front there. And you can see they're sort of, at this particular moment, we're sort of doing a decent job of screening them down that side. But you can see in the far side there's Bernardo Silva. Look how much deeper he is than he was in the first half. Rather than being on the last line, which is sort of deeper. That's Fred and Casemiro.
De Bruyne's on the last line.
The last line's even deeper than that, because that's Fred and Casemiro. But you can see how much higher Luke Shaw's had to come to deal with Bernardo Silva. You can see then the space over here that's created on the far side. De Bruyne's sort of going into that space. And Obviously, at this moment in time, if Ruben Diaz is able to turn the ball, maybe even play it to Bernardo Silva, you've got Kyle Walker who's free in that area. So that's not even John Stones there. It's not even Gundogan. That Kyle Walker in that moment is in that space because they've brought Bernardo Silva a little bit deeper. De Bruyne has gone in behind, created the space in here. It was impressive to see from City and a few tweaks from Pep to just disrupt what Ten Hag did. So that was the tactical chess element that I quite enjoyed seeing from two obviously fantastic coaches. Then likewise, on the opposite side here, at this moment, you've got Grealish, who's again much deeper. Look how close he is to that back unit there that City have got.
It's like a left back there, isn't it, really? If that was an average team building up, your left back would probably be there. And your left wing would be up there.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's just that tweak he's made because Wan-Bissaka and Shaw were man marking. So Wan-Bissaka's come up. There's a lot of space left in behind here. Again, in this situation, rather than Gundogan and De Bruyne going into those wide channels that we mentioned, Gundogan's come towards the ball. Casemiro is marking his man, so he's come out with him. That creates a massive gap there. And as we said, it's that technical element there where, look at Eriksen. He's focused on the ball here. Rodri's just ghosted behind him and he's able to get into this space afterwards. So all that happens from here is I think Gundogan, he's in a little bit of space himself. He runs a couple of yards that way and just plays a really clever pass back in there. He doesn't even have to give it to anybody else. He just plays a really clever pass because Rodri's got the wrong side of Eriksen, just on the blind side there. It's a really subtle thing, a really small thing, but because we're very man-oriented.
It opens up the whole team.
Yeah, because we're man-oriented, there's a big space in this area, sort of between the lines, but also in that wide channel.
And it's almost baiting Manchester United, isn't it? Because also we could think, well, actually, that's brilliant for us now. Go win it, go high. You know, Wan-Bissaka, you got to follow him in. Luke Shaw, okay, the ball's on this side, so you don't need to be there. Bernardo Silva, you tuck in, that's the right thing to do. And help Fred, that's fine. Varane, you're spare at the moment. But it, like you said, it enticed us to maybe go chasing a little bit, to draw us on. And then you're getting things like that when you can literally see Eriksen's ball watching there and he's making the run that you said.
Yeah, it's all that is there. And I think sometimes we draw things maybe a little bit out of proportion in terms of how small the margins actually are. Eriksen there has probably switched off for a fraction of a second. And genuinely in professional football, that's all it is. It's the tiniest margins, the tiniest bit of concentration or whatever, and they've got in behind you, got into the space and had a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
I think the last thing I wanted to touch on was something that we mentioned a little bit in the preview as well, in terms of the way that United attacked. So it's a small point, but I think in the way that United attacked when we had the ball, when we turned it over, there was very much a really clear emphasis, as we'd said in the preview, that you don't want to just play a long ball straight away because the City back three are all... The reason Pep puts these profiles in is because they're all good 1v1.
Ready to deal with
they're all quick, they're all going to deal with that. So if you play one ball downfield to Marcus Rashford, he's going to get... The City players will get there first. If the defenders don't, we'll take a sweeping.
And that happened a couple of times, actually.
It did, yeah. What was interesting to see from United was that we did modify our approach exactly as we sort of said that we might do in the preview. And what we saw was that rather than playing that ball straight away down the line to Rashford, the first movement from the forward player, whoever was highest at the time, was towards the ball with the aim of sort of bringing the defenders in, drag them in, and then that'll create the space to go longer in behind. Because obviously if you leave the defenders in this situation, they'll get there first.
Yeah.
So it was nice for United to see that there was a little bit more thought than just hit the ball long. And as you said at the very start, it was just a shame that we lacked the quality a little bit in terms of executing that and dealing with it. So
I think
frustrating.
Like I said, for me, the closing moments which I had at the stadium, and I still think now, is that I don't think that game showed us anything we didn't know.
No.
I think we went into it. I looked at the lack of striking options. That was evident. I looked at the fact that Eriksen had to play, etc., hasn't really got the legs. There was a lot of times, I know you just picked out 1/2 a millisecond there, but there was other things where just physically he can't keep up. You look at Stones, you look at Rodri, decent with their feet. They've got a bit of an engine. Obviously, Gundogan can get about the pitch, and so can De Bruyne. And you just look at Eriksen as the odd one out of the whole midfield. Fred can get about, Casemiro can get about, Bruno can even get about to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But Eriksen's just the odd one out in that he just can't do it.
And that's why we're so keen on Mason Mount.
Absolutely.
For all you can say about his quality on the ball, maybe not being quite as good as Eriksen, defensive Mason Mount is actually very, very good compared to midfielders in terms of his energy, his work rate, his pressing ability, but also his ability to actually win tackles. Yeah. It's better than a lot of similar midfielders would be, which is why Ten Hag wants to get him in this team, make us a bit more physical and take us to the next level with that.
Exactly. We have made progress this season. We know we've made progress this season.
Look,
the transfer window is going to tell us a lot.
But this game, if there's any conclusion to take from this game, Erik Ten Hag has nullified one of the best teams in the world, and the way they're playing at the moment, they should steamroll into the Champions League final. Erik Ten Hag has basically nullified them. That tells you how good of a manager we've got, and that should be nothing but positive.
Well, he said we're the only team in the world who could, what did he say, makes it you have to fight for it. Like,
or come back like that from the situation.
I mean, look,
we got
rivals can look at it and say, look, mate, you played in the final, you lost. No one cares how you played.
We got lucky.
We have to draw the positives.
The quality of our players is so far off the quality of their players.
Exactly.
And we had a game plan that worked as far as it could have done defensively. Just a bit more quality in this team. Give Ten Hag the tools to work with, and this guy will make United one of the best teams around.
There you go. Guys, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Plenty more to come over the summer. Just because there's no games for a hot minute until July, do not think that the tactical view will just disintegrate into thin air and you're not going to see Cam again until our next game, because that is not the case. So take care, and we'll see you all again soon. Peace.